to thrive. One rabbi wrote to us, "I just wanted to say thank you for your moral leadership in this impossible time. I'm so grateful for the space that you're carving out that's vital for me and other progressive rabbis to feel like we can exist and hold all the parts of ourselves together in this moment." Just a few weeks ago, we partnered with our friends at J Street to bring a group of rabbis to Israel and the West Bank to hear from both Israeli and Palestinian leaders and to recommit to fighting for the safety and for the rights of both people. As we face an upsurge in anti-Semitism, we're supporting our rabbis in addressing threats in their own communities. We're training Jewish and secular leaders, including major human rights organizations, educational institutions, and public servants, to understand and confront anti-Semitism. And at the same time, we're also pushing back against the cynical actors who wish to use the real threat of anti-Semitism to restrict our basic First Amendment rights. Here at home, because of course, Trua is committed to doing our work both here in the United States and Canada, where we live, and in Israel and the occupied territories. We're organizing rabbis to ensure that the United States continues to be a place of refuge for those seeking asylum. This is especially crucial today, as just this afternoon, President Biden announced a new asylum ban that will prevent many people who are coming to this country for safety from getting in and having that chance to apply for asylum. And we're working tirelessly to protect the lifeblood of American democracy as we prepare for a daunting and terrifying election. Our new think tank, Amor, is delving deep into Jewish wisdom to respond to the biggest challenges of our moment and to push back against billionaire-funded right-wing think tanks that are working hard to push the Jewish community toward anti-democratic positions. So thank you for making all of that work possible. I know everybody's eating, but if you're a rabbi or a cantor or a cantorial student or a rabbinical student who's taken part in a Trua program or used Trua resources, please rise. Okay. Don't sit down quite yet. If you're a layperson who's joined one of our webinars, used our resources, or otherwise looked to Trua and our members for guidance, please rise. So thank you to all of you for being part of the Trua community. I want to quote one of my mentors, Ruth Messenger, who's here tonight, who says all the time, "Despair is not a political strategy." So thank you to all of you for refusing to despair, for committing to hope. That takes all of us. It takes our nearly 2,400 rabbis and cantors across the US and Canada. It takes all of you who are here in person today, here in person or virtually, and it takes the thousands of people in our broader community. We know that those of you who are here, both clergy and lay leaders, understand the power of religious leaders. As Amy Rutkin, the former chief of staff to Congressman Jerry Nadler, said, Trua rabbis have played a critical role and been a clarion voice in shaping policymakers' views on issues of concern, not only in the Jewish community, but in the country as a whole. You know that when the rabbinic moral voice is loud and clear, people pay attention. This is what we've done for more than 2 decades, and it's what we'll continue to do for decades to come. I want to offer some thanks now. First of all, to the Trua staff and board. Can you please rise if you're in the room? You are the ones. You're the ones who, with your holy chutzpah and brilliant know-how, keep us moving and keep us moving forward. I want to say thank you and mazel tov to our honorees, Marina Kaufman, Rabbi Chuck Feinberg, let's hold the applause till I get through the whole list. Marina Kaufman, Rabbi Chuck Feinberg, Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg, Rabbi Toba Spitzer, and Rabbi Victor Urecki. Our movements are better off because of your leadership. I know that I've personally learned so much from all of you, and I'm really excited for everybody to learn from you and to celebrate each and every one of you tonight. I want to say a special welcome to our borough president, Mark Levine. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Thank you to our host committee members, our Gala Ambassador Circle, and everyone, all of you who are celebrating with us tonight. You are the ones who make Truah's work possible. You are the ones who strengthen our collective moral voice. Before we begin our program, I also want to acknowledge the Lenape people on whose unceded traditional lands we in New York are gathering. As an organization that's devoted to dignity, equity, and human rights for all people, Truah's naming this history as just one of many concrete steps needed to repair centuries of land theft perpetrated against the Lenape and other Native peoples. Now, we're really pleased that many of you are joining us virtually from all over the country and perhaps all over the world. So for those of you joining us virtually, closed captioning is available at the bottom of your screen by clicking the CC button. And we're also delighted to welcome 2 ASL interpreters on Zoom in an effort to make this event more accessible. And of course, if you have any trouble on Zoom, there's Truah staff in the boxes who are there to help you out. And now I'm pleased to share with you some words of hope and encouragement from alumni of Truah's rabbinical and cantorial student programs.
It's a hard job to be a rabbi.
The Jewish community obviously is so fractured right now and in so much pain in so many different ways.
It's like we need a translator so that we can understand what each other are saying.
It's our job to lead. And we lead by listening to the stories of our people, by working with partner organizations in the field who are the experts in the work.
To hold their communities together, to manage people who are in different political places within their communities. And this is an impossible task.
To speak truth to power, to make the change that we need to build a world of wholeness, justice, and peace. That's what Truah is doing.
More than 300 rabbinical and cantorial students have gone through our rabbinical student programs.
I've known about Truah for a long time and have always been inspired by its mission.
Of people who care deeply about Jewish tradition and engaging with Jewish tradition and ritual and practice.
So powerful to me about Truah is morally clear.
They're bringing the moral voice that they learned through Truah toward engaging with the critical issues of our moment. The students in our program get a hands-on experience of seeing human rights up close.
And I wouldn't have gotten involved with that work in our community if it wasn't for my experience as a summer fellow.
Spending time doing solidarity work in the South Hebron Hills, building real relationships.
The conflict that people are feeling around Israel, around race in America, around electoral politics, and in the work with Truah gives that the koach, gives the strength to go and do that work.
There were a lot of experiences that pushed me out of my comfort zone in a good way, and I welcomed it all.
I did a lot. I learned a lot.
We help students gain skills for speaking in a moral voice that's deeply grounded in Torah and deeply grounded in Judaism.
Skills of community organizing as it relates to justice issues are the exact same skills that it takes to organizing and building community.
The skills in the fellowship were about listening, we're about storytelling, we're about using text and tradition, using personal relationships, engaging in deep, meaningful conversation.
Skills that they've learned with Truah about how to manage in politically complex communities.
Having been on the ground in Israel, Palestine, and having those relationships, that actually allows me to have that shared us authentically. I feel that Truah in this time can actually be really, really essential to doing that work.
We want Truah always to be their home, to be the place they come for inspiration, to be the place they come for resources, to be the place they come for network and for community, for guidance in responding to the critical issues of the moment.
I'm still in touch individually with people from my cohort, and those are really special relationships.
Part of the Jewish community and the Trua community is really a place of people who believe that doing good in the world and living a religious life go hand in hand.
The colleagues that I met, the conversations that we had, the learning we did, the experiences we had were really impactful and informative for the rabbi that I am today.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rabbi Margot Hughes Robinson. Oh, that never happens. That's great. I'm the former New York Rabbinic organizer at Trua. I'm a 2018 alumna of the Trua Israel Fellowship, and I now serve sort of in the same neighborhood as the executive director of Partners for Progressive Israel. Also, extremely grateful to be with you all here tonight at B'nai Jeshurun, where I really feel I was molded and formed as a rabbi. Getting to stand here in the legacy of Trua and also of BJ is a real treat. And I'm really honored to be here with you all tonight. So every year at our gala, we talk about rabbis and cantors using their rabbinic moral voices to bring about concrete material change in their neighborhoods and their communities. But what does that actually look like? How do we actually make that happen? And who are the prophetic rabble-rousers that we get to do it with? The National Religious Campaign Against Torture is one of Trua's oldest partners in making that good trouble. The Trua was a founding member of the National Religious Campaign Against Torture, NARCAT, in the early 2000s. And at the time, Trua had been taking on our first ever North American campaign, an anti-torture campaign that had been spurred by the revelations of torture of detainees at Abu Ghraib and at Guantanamo. These efforts were rooted in showing our people that torture violated Jewish law, while also providing a Jewish framing to those activists who already opposed torture on human rights or moral grounds. With NARCAT's partnership, we took on solitary confinement because they did. Because there was an understanding that we could not look at torture and racism abroad without talking about torture and racism at home. And the work progressed. And as it progressed, it was clear that aiming to end solitary confinement meant taking on the injustices of mass incarceration writ large. And we've stood together to end torture and fight injustice from Rikers Island to Ferguson to Pelican Bay Prison. And as NARCAT took on those broader issues, so did we at Trua, and we've been proud to work with them ever since. And with that, I am pleased to invite my friend, my colleague, my teacher, Johnny Perez, director of NARCAT's U.S. Prisons Program, for some deeper insights into what we've accomplished together and what we could accomplish when supporters like you get involved. Welcome, Johnny. All right, so Johnny, to start off, I want to talk about what role do religious and faith communities have in our movements? Or I think another way of thinking about this is what changes on the ground when religious leaders meet with electeds, get behind bills, and start coming out to the streets with people?
First of all, thank you for having me. Such a pleasure to be here. We've advocated side by side for years. I'm talking rallies, press conferences, vigils, and now to be in this space here, not only breaking bread with you all, but also talking about these issues. I think about it 4 different ways. We probably know a lot of things that are illegal, but still ethical. And solitary confinement is just one of those good examples. When we invite faith leaders into the conversation, a few things happens, right? First, we draw a thin line between ethical and legal. Faith leaders are able to elevate, these issues to a point that's beyond just policy and laws. Oftentimes, faith leaders are in roles of power and moral responsibility and are uniquely positioned to hold our legislators morally accountable to the policies or the values that they say they run for or they stand for when they're on the campaign trail. And I talk to politicians all the time who switch up after they get in office, and the power of faith leaders allows us to hold them accountable in that respect. 2 other pieces: faith leaders are really deeply rooted and connected with community. So we're able to mobilize community by partnering with faith leaders, allying with faith leaders. We're able to educate faith communities in ways that maybe others can't. And when you combine the power of community with the power of moral authority, if you will, then that translates into political influence. That can look different ways in different states. I won't go into the details, but when we invite faith leaders into organizing and allyship, those are three areas that really stand out for me.
Absolutely. And I also just want to lift up that here in the room, our honoree tonight, Rabbi Chuck Feinberg, has been super involved in NERCAT's work for years.
Thanks.
Rabbi Feinberg's work at Interfaith Action for Human Rights, in addition to his pulpit work, has really been a game changer and is a legacy that I've tried to learn from as well, with the passage of the Department of Corrections disclosure bills in Maryland and Virginia, so that we could know how much even the prison and jail systems in those states were using solitary confinement, as well as the passage of another bill that banned the use of solitary confinement for teenagers. And I know you and I talked a bit about our friend and colleague, Dr. Chaplain Victoria Phillips, who's a member of the Halt Solitary campaign here in New York. And when you're talking about the idea of that moral accountability, I think of Dr. V immediately, and that every call, every rally, she just, gently, who's checked in with the family members? Have we called them? If we're planning a rally, are they invited? The person who keeps track of all the anniversaries, the care and relational work, I think is a thing that I've learned from.
Quick reaction to that, I'll add another fourth thing that I think is like really important that, that faith leaders bring into coalition work. And that is this power of community and being able to hold and support family members who have lost people to the system, and also folks like myself who has been impacted by the system in ways that maybe others can't, like a law firm, for example. And we need the lawyers because we have to sue these folks, but also holding community, holding space for the loved ones, to put that more realistically, we had 38 people die over 3 years at Rikers Island. Those are 38 families, 38 communities who have all been impacted by policies, that are not reflective of our shared values. So being able to hold space, not just at a press conference or a rally, but to actually sit with a loved one in a way that others can't.
Absolutely. And I think turning towards the fight to close Rikers Island and our shared work here in New York, what do you think we can learn, and the folks in this room can learn from some of the story and the fight to pass only a few months ago, Intro 549, which is now the law in New York City banning the use of all solitary confinement in New York City jails?
Yeah. And the story of Intro 549 is really the collective power of the people, and the power of momentum. The Halt Solitary bill, the Humane Alternatives to Long-Term Isolated Confinement, which was a 9-year campaign, side by side, every step of the way. And I'll say we would have probably passed that bill in 3 years had we had more people come along faster. But being able to make that change at the state level created the type of environment that now allows us to capitalize off that momentum at the city level. And one thing that we learned was to get veto-proof majorities and hold our legislators accountable, to what they say they stand for. And when the mayor actually vetoed the bill, we were able to say, no, sorry, the people have spoken, and this is what the people want. We overrode this mayor's decision to, respond to harm with more harm in a lot of different ways. The power of community, the power of building on top of it, and we just recently mentioned Rabbi Feinberg, and I also highlight, Natasha White, who's also with him today and part of that staff. And the reason I bring that up is because Natasha left New York after the HALT bill passed to make similar changes in Maryland and in Virginia, because it's not just, level to New York, but also across the country. So being able to build on the momentum that we've created, hold these legislators morally accountable every step of the way, right? And then allow the people to speak. And in this case, when you're on the right side of what's right, on the right side of justice, the rest of your kind of work is kind of done. Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. Please God. I think in that way, right, this momentum of how the 15-day limit of HALT at the state level, and now the 4-hour limit for any person in confinement, and New York City jails with 549 passing. What's next on the horizon? You talk about this work in other states. I know there's incredible work that True is partnering with NERCAT in California. Where can we go next?
Yeah, and for folks to understand, so what's happening in New York is part of a larger campaign, called the Unlock the Box campaign that stands 23 states who have state level campaigns, all led by faith leaders and folks who are part of these communities and impacted by these laws and regulations and policies to make similar changes like we've done in New York. New York has one of the most progressive pieces of legislation in the country. And we've taken what we learned in New York and added it to our federal bill. We have a federal bill that seeks to limit solitary in very much way that we did it on Rikers Island. And these are all based on best practices that we learned in the youth system. Who knew, that we can learn for how we treat children. It's a lot of ways that we should also treat adults in terms of actual behavioral change and accountability, which at the end of the day, that's what the fight is for. So locally, Intro 549 continues to be because you can pass the law, but you also have to make sure that you implement the law. And what we're seeing at the state level is that correctional officers are not happy about the law passing, so they've undermined the spirit of the law. And they've thrown away grievances. They're keeping people beyond, what's legally possible now. And that's where faith leaders actually are critical, because you can make visits. For those of you who are chaplains working inside, you can lean in a completely different way that allows us to move this legislation forward. So at the state level, there's 23 different states that all have active legislation. Federally, there's a federal bill. We have 180 organizations who've supported it. And we continue just old school organizing, legislator by legislator, state by state. Yeah.
Absolutely. And could you share a little bit about the National Day of Action that's planned for August? I've been hearing rumors of a bus full of rabbis showing up to Sacramento.
So first of all, shout out to the rabbis in California. From delivering a letter signed by 150 faith leaders to Governor Newsom's office, to having vigils at his lawn, which he doesn't like too much, to a National Day of Action, actually a statewide Day of Action that's going to be supported by national partners in August. And this is where we really, where the rubber hits the road per se. We bring out faith leaders, community members, folks who've been impacted by the harm of incarceration, to basically hold our legislators accountable. So August 18th, but come back to me.
I might have it on the paper.
And we would love to see you there. And if you have folks there, I'll say this last thing. I was talking to somebody earlier who said, I'm just a rabbi. When somebody says that, promise me that you'll say, wait a minute, let's take a look at that. Because the power of collective action, right, says, or synergy says that you and I can do together what we can't do individually. And 1 + 1 can equal 3 or 500 if we try hard enough. So it's about understanding what are your talents, what are your unique gifts, and finding a way to leverage those to contribute to, the greater good, that's centered on our shared values. Thanks.
So we'll look for the date for the National Day of Action online. But whether you're California-based or nationally with ESCA, right, the national bill in the House of Representatives, if you have a senator in your state that is not signed on, get in touch with Mr. Johnny Perez and get them signed on. I just want to thank you again so much, Johnny, for your brilliance and your leadership. Please, let's give Johnny another round of applause.
Thank you. Yeah. Nice. And thank you all for your leadership. I've been to a number of galas in my time, and there's not a lot of galas that are having conversations at this level. So just deeply appreciative, like welcoming into your space. And the food is good. Thanks.
Thank you so much again, Johnny. We're grateful to partner with NERCAT, and we're grateful for you. Nailed it. And now I'd like to welcome to the stage our musical guest for tonight, Jewish activist, community prayer leader, and musical powerhouse. Here to share with us music from her new album, Revelry, Molly Baygut. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I think it's about time we sing something. How's that sound? So I'm honored to help lift up Trua's work tonight with some music, another type of call. And as Johnny said, this song speaks to how collective action, when we are able to wake ourselves up from the places where we've become complacent or tired or checked out, how 1 + 1 can equal 3. And I will invite you to sing with me once you catch on. You can try that with me. One more time. You wake us up from our sleep to fight for our community till everyone is free. Guided by our biggest light, love is part of how we fight. And I pray for our strength. And I pray for our strength. That's the whole thing. And I pray for our strength. And I pray for our strength. Humanity, you wake us up from our sleep to fight for our humanity till everyone is free. Oh, guided by our biggest light, love is part of how we fight. And I pray for our strength. 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 Solidarity, you wake us up from our sleep to fight for solidarity till everyone is free. Guided by our biggest light, love is part of how we fight. And I pray for our strength. 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 You wake us up from our sleep to fight for our humanity till everyone is free. Till everyone is free. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hadar Harris, and I'm a proud Trua board member. Mazal Tov again to tonight's remarkable honorees. I'm in awe of your courage, your generosity of spirit, and your commitment to fighting for the future that we all deserve. Thank you for all that you do. It's an honor to be here tonight as we celebrate change makers and risk takers, moving mountains within and beyond our Jewish communities. And as I look out into the audience, I see many of the very faces who dreamt up this organization, whose values and whose righteous chutzpah made possible all that we lift up here tonight. I also see in front of me some new faces, some potential partners in transforming this world. Some rabbinical and cantorial students, leaders of the next frontier of Jewish life. And together, we're going to build a world that honors the dignity of all human beings. I don't know about you, but this year has shaken me to my core. I've been rattled by scenes and stories of violence that I didn't think were possible. I've felt the ripple effects of growing anti-Semitism all over the country and all over the world. I've watched in horror as Netanyahu's government has abandoned the hostages and mercilessly claimed tens of thousands of lives in Gaza. Many in the Jewish community have chosen one side over the other, or worse, fallen silent. The same can't be said about Trua, my moral tether in times of deep confusion and unrest. Long before October 7th, but especially since that traumatic day, I've turned to my rabbis and cantors at Trua for prophetic wisdom, for guidance, for clarity. As a layperson, it's critically important to me that the Jews of influence in our shuls and in our streets, the ones that have the ears of those in power, the ones who are most visible and most heard in a moment when all eyes are on us, be leaders that I can stand behind, that they be leaders that I can be proud to have standing behind me. To the rabbis and the cantors of Trua here tonight, I thank you. I thank you for your moral courage. I thank you for bringing people together around shared humanity in a time of unprecedented division. I thank you for putting yourselves at risk every time you sound the alarm on injustice and use your rabbinic voice. When we support Trua, as we are about to do in a moment, that's your cue, we're ensuring that our community leaders have the tools, the training, the support, and the camaraderie that they need the most to most effectively mobilize us, you and me, for those of you on Zoom, to live out our Jewish values and to disrupt and to dismantle the very well-funded systems that undermine the sanctity of human life and build the world to come. A gift to Trua is a gift to our leaders, a gift to those they represent, and a gift toward a future that we can be proud of. So together, right now, we're going to raise $25,000. If Trua has ever moved you to act, if you recognize the urgent need of the deep Torah and deep goodness that Trua is bringing to this broken world, I invite you to join me right now in supporting our cause. For viewers at home, you're going to get a link in the chat to go donate. For those of you in the room, you're going to see a program card on your table. On the back of the card, I didn't bring it up. Oh, well, somebody raise it up. There, we see it. There we go. You've got it in your hands. Everybody take one. Raise it up in your hands. On the back of that card is a QR code that you can scan to donate online, or if you are allergic to technology and you want to go old school, you can fill out that card with your credit card information, which will be kept private and will not be sold to anybody, and Trua staff will come to collect it. For those of you who are opting to use the QR code, open up your camera like you're going to take a picture. So open it up like you're going to take a picture and scan it and hover it over the QR code. You're going to see a yellow link that pops up that says tiny URL. Click on it, and it's going to take you to the form where you can put in all of your information. Please give as generously as you can tonight. I'm so happy that there's like movement in the room and that people are already getting their phones out. Who has your phones out? Let's see. Who has your phone out? Who has your phone out? It's only going to take a minute, but the reward will be so powerful. Please give as generously as you can. Our goal is to raise $25,000. If you can give $18, if you can give $180, if you can give $1,800, or if you want to give $25,000, we'll end this part really fast. Any gift impacts our ability to do this holy work, and we are deeply, deeply grateful. So I'm going to do mine right now with all of you. And who has their phone out? Who's working on their phone? Who has it? The QR code's really, really easy, right? Right. You can also make a donation through Trua's website. So you could just go straight to the website. I hope I'm ad-libbing there. I don't know if that's true. We've got $25,000 to raise tonight. Take your phone out. Don't check your text messages. Just go straight to the donate button and you'll be able to make a donation here. Everybody's got it out. I see people working on their phones. That's good. If you don't want to use your phone to make a donation, you can fill out that card that's in front of you right now. And there are members of the wonderful, amazing Trua staff walking through the crowd, finding their way through the tables to be able to collect those cards. So please give generously. This work, the leadership that Trua has shown to people, not just Jews, but also the full scope of the moral community, is so very important. And as we approach the months and weeks and days to come, we know that that leadership and that voice is going to become even more important than it is today. Who's got their phone? If you're done donating, raise your phone in the air. Let's see it. Who's already done it? Great. We've got a few people. We need some more. Our goal, to meet the goal of the gala tonight, we need to raise $25,000 now to be able to close the goals for the fundraiser tonight. So your gifts are really important. Anybody put the card in? Great. We've got staff members walking through, looking for the cards. Anybody has a card? We can collect the cards. The basket, it's like passing the basket at church, but a little different. So anybody who needs help with the QR code or making a donation on your phone, one of the staff people can also help you to find that. We have just a few minutes left to be able to meet that goal. We're so grateful. So grateful. This is not the schmooze part. This is the donate part. All of you at home, I hope that you've been able to also access the donate button and to be able to make a gift. We deeply appreciate your participation from home and your donation here tonight. We just have a few more minutes in order to meet our goal of $25,000 to be able to make the full goal for tonight's gala to fund the important work that Trua does. I heard that there's not going to be dessert if we don't meet the goal. Anybody needs help? We're good? All right. I've been told that you have all done an amazing job. Thank you so much to everybody who has given. Let's keep it up. Phone lines will be open through the course of the night. I don't think they do that anymore, but you can continue to make a gift if you are so moved throughout the course of the night. or you can send the link to your friends and ask them to donate as well. All right, everyone, now, okay, you had your moment. You had your schmoozino moment. Our program continues now. We're now at the moment that everybody has come for, where we will honor our awardees for the evening. But in order for that to happen, everybody needs to sit down again so that we can continue tonight's program. There's a dessert reception afterwards, specifically for schmoozing. So right now, Rolly, I'm going to introduce you. I am pleased to introduce, I am so pleased to introduce who I am so pleased. Wait, try that again. I am so pleased to introduce our award presenter and panel moderator tonight, longtime Trua Chaver, former Trua board member and honoree. Let's see if they're going to be quiet when I say your name. Rabbi Rolly Matalon. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. I am Rolly Matalon. I've been a BJ rabbi here for many years. I'm one of the founding members of Trua. Then it was called Rabbis for Human Rights North America. When we started organizing North American colleagues on behalf of human rights here and in Israel around 2001. So I'm honored to have been part of the beginning journey of Trua. It's a great honor to be standing here tonight. And I'm especially grateful for the kavod to present our incredible honorees with their awards. I want to welcome all of you to our community here on behalf of my colleague, Rabbi Felicia Sol, myself, and our entire community to our home here, and I hope you feel at home. Each year, Trua gathers this wonderful community in celebration of outstanding people who have devoted their lives to advancing and protecting the dignity, equity, and human rights of all people. I'm honored to be the one to introduce you to these 5 incredible leaders who will now come one by one on the stage, whose courage, wisdom, and generosity of heart will really blow you away. For many years, Trua has been presenting the Raphael Lemkin Human Rights Award to an outstanding human rights leader. As probably most of you know, Raphael Lemkin was a Jewish Holocaust survivor and creator of the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Trua is proud to present its Raphael Lemkin Human Rights Award to my dear friend, member of BJ for many, many years, extraordinary person, Marina Kaufman. Just a few words about Marina, who is an emerita member of the board of Human Rights Watch, where she has been active for decades, was one of the founders of the Human Rights Watch Film Festival. From the arts to the United Nations To Human Rights Watch, Marina's decades of leadership have made her a known force across all corners of the human rights landscape. Marina was also a member of the board of BJ, and she had much impact in our community. So I'm honored, Marina, to bestow upon you tonight the Raphael Lemkin Human Rights Award. Next, I'd like to say a few words about Rabbi Chuck Feinberg. Chuck is an exemplar of Jewish justice leadership. He was one of the founders of Trua, a longtime board member and a continued source of wisdom and mentorship. Chuck was the founding executive director of Interfaith Action for Human Rights and now serves as the interim executive director of IAHR. This organization represents people of faith who educate and advocate in Maryland, DC, and Virginia for correction systems that avoid unnecessarily punitive practices such as solitary confinement. Rabbi Chuck Feinberg, in recognition of your prophetic vision and everlasting commitment to the Torah of justice, I'm honored to present you Trua's 2024 Founders Award. Each year, Trua honors risk-taking, change-making clergy who demonstrate an unwavering commitment to living and working in accordance with the Torah of justice and human rights with the Rabbinic Human Rights Hero Award. Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg is a nationally known change-maker, award-winning author, and rabbinic rabble-rouser. There is no issue of justice and no corner of the Jewish community that Danya hasn't made better with her leadership. Most recently, she served as scholar in residence at the National Council of Jewish Women, where, among other things, she founded and led a 2,500 strong rabbis for Repro network of Jewish clergy, committed to using their platform towards reproductive freedom. Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg, I'm proud to present you with the 2024 Rabbinic Human Rights Hero Award. Our next Rabbinic Human Rights Hero is Rabbi Toba Spitzer. For her decades of devotion to a multi-issue justice rabbinate and her unparalleled moral influence on the greater Boston Jewish community. Rabbi Toba Spitzer has served Congregation Dorshei Tzedek in West Newton, Massachusetts since 1997. She's a past president of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association and was the first openly LGBTQ leader of a national rabbinic organization. Among other things, she has been active with the New England Jewish Labor Committee. sits on the strategy team of the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, served on the TRUA board, and currently co-chairs TRUA's Massachusetts Regional Cluster of Rabbis and Cantors. Rabbi Toba Spitzer, I'm proud to present you with this year's Rabbinic Human Rights Hero Award. And we celebrate now Rabbi Victor Urecki for nearly 40 years of leading a congregation that prioritizes interfaith community building, refugee resettlement, and human rights for all people. Victor has served as the spiritual leader of B'nai Jacob Synagogue in Charleston, West Virginia since 1986. He's the co-founder and past president of the West Virginia Interfaith Refugee Ministry, as well as the co-founder of the Root and the Branch, an organization dedicated to bringing together faith traditions in West Virginia to dialogue and learn from one another. And here, Ruth Messenger just shared this wonderful book called Enduring Wisdom, a compilation of Rabbi Victor Urecki's writings. So tonight, I'm thrilled to give TRUA's Lifetime Achievement Award to Rabbi Victor Urecki. So a big applause to all of them, all the honorees. So we're going to spend a few moments in a conversation. I want to remind us all that we're being captioned and interpreted for our virtual attendees. So I remind you all when you speak to slow down so that everyone has access to all the insights we're going to hear from you and about you tonight. Make sure all your mics are on. So just want to start with a question about how this work chose you. At what point did you know that your life was going to live at the intersection of Judaism and justice and human rights?
I was born in Morocco in 1956, at the time of the independence of the country. My dad was meeting with Arab and Jewish friends to make sure that with independence, the traditional friendships between Arabs and Jews would be maintained. He spoke at the stadium in Tangiers, promoting friendship and respect between Arabs and Jews. I remember being in that stadium, hearing my dad speaking in Arabic, speaking to Jews and Arabs. It was extraordinary. I was in awe of my father. In the state of the world today, I look to my father's teachings and have tried to carry his openness and acceptance of the world through my work in human rights and Judaism. For me, that was the beginning of understanding the importance of respecting the other. Later, I became a conference interpreter, and when I worked at the UN, I asked to be assigned at the third committee, which covered social matters and human rights. I then became involved with Human Rights Watch over 35 years. It was a turning point in my life. I learned from my dear friend, Ari Nair, who I think is here tonight, how the Geneva Conventions were intended to protect the human rights of people whose rights were violated. I also learned about the importance of the rule of law. About the same time, I met Rabbi Marshall Meyer at a meeting of America's Watch. Marshall told me how justice and Judaism were linked together. The teachings and practices which I have come to explore through Judaism have demonstrated to me how interconnected my Jewish faith and work with Human Rights Watch have been.
Thank you, Marina. And before Chuck responds, since you mentioned Ari Nair, I commend and I recommend that people read his amazing piece in the New York Review of Books. In the last, I think was the last issue.
I think there are three intersections of people coming into my life that influenced me. One was actually my father, was not a religious man, but for 40 years he had a Catholic partner and they never had an argument. This was in a generation where that was not very common for a Jewish businessman to have a Catholic partner. And the Catholic partner he was from. They went to church every week. They were very involved in their church. But as I've reflected on this, what I learned from that, I think what had an influence on me was that you did not have to give up yourself to be part of another community, to make friends with another community. That indeed, affirming yourself with others gave strength to the other as well as to yourself. And I think that helped me in my work when I could say to people, no, I can't go to the meeting on Shabbat. That's just not who I am. And to feel the respect that people had for that kind of position. The second is when I was 15, I came to my rabbi and I said I wanted to be a rabbi. I had studied with him the year before. His name is Philip Lippis, alav shalom. And this, I grew up outside Chicago, in the North Shore of Chicago. And one day he came to me when I was a junior in high school. And he said, there's this conference in Chicago that I'd like you to go to. It means you would have to miss a day of school. And I thought about that for 2 seconds. And I said, of course. And the conference was the first conference on religion and race at the Edgewater Hotel in Chicago. It happens that the Edgewater Hotel was not far from where my father worked, so he gave me a ride there. And so one of the first speakers I heard was Abraham Joshua Heschel. And I still remember his opening line. He said, the first conference on religion and race was when Moses came to Pharaoh and said, let my people go. And he said, the people of Israel were able to cross the Red Sea more readily than some Negroes could cross a university campus. And I heard Martin Luther King, alav shalom, at that conference, and other distinguished religious leaders. And the point of this is to say that the zeitgeist of those years, this was in the mid-60s, was that religious leaders had an important role in this society, and they could be leaders on important political issues. And of course, we all know Dr. Heschel was the leader of Clergy and Laity Against the War, and of course, he marched with Martin Luther King and was so active in all the civil rights movement, and the leaders of those movements, William Sloane Coffin, they were religious leaders. And that, I think, had a profound influence on me. And the third I'd like to say is when I was a rabbi in Madison, Wisconsin, I worked with a young woman, well, we're all young in those years, who was director of Jewish social service. She's a young woman, her name is Lori Melrud from Milwaukee. And she helped develop that agency at the time, but she took a year off and went down to the border to deal with the looming immigration crisis at that time. And it's so profoundly sad that 40 years later, we're still struggling over that issue. But she came to me and said, you know, Chuck, there are people down there who are fleeing persecution, and you should say something about that. And I thought about it. And after a while, I realized, yes, this is something that the Jewish community should be involved in. And so our congregation, after some deliberation, became a sanctuary congregation. And we took in a Guatemalan family of 6. And so, but Lori has always been kind of a moral guide for me. She had such, and still has, she lives in Arizona, and she has such a strong vision of what is right, how people should be treated, how people should be respected, no matter who they are or where they're from. And she taught me a lot about how important it is to welcome and respect every human being.
So the fact that I am religious at all, so I was an activist before I was religious at all. I, kind of grew up in the kind of general twice a year synagogue kind of family, and I was an activist in high school and college. And the fact that I'm religious at all, and definitely the fact that I'm a rabbi, is entirely the fault of Rabbi Alan Liu, Zichrono Livracha, yes, who was so major and was such a profound model of holding together the best of Torah and our Jewish values and living those values in the world, which meant also showing up to protest executions, to protest when you needed to show up, right? And living out what that meant in the pulpit, in the streets. So I got to see, by the time I was off to rabbinical school, there was never a question that you could pull all of that. So that's the one moment. And then the second moment for me was the murder of Mike Brown in 2014 in Ferguson. B'diavad, right after the fact, looking back, that was the moment when I understood when social justice, that fighting for a more whole world for everyone could not just be part of my rabbinate, but that if we as a community were not working with our full capacity to try to create a world in which every single person's dignity and value is not lived out in every single policy and procedure and every system that we have, then we are absolutely living Torah wrong. And that was a profound reorientation for me in my rabbinate.
So when I got that question, I remember thinking, I actually grew up, I didn't know you could be Jewish and not live at the intersection of social justice. And I say that because where is he? Rabbi Arthur Wasco is here. Where is Arthur? So around 1974, when I was in 5th grade, my mother, who's also here, Nessa Spitzer, met Arthur in a Jewish studies class, and Arthur was beginning his journey back into Judaism, and they decided to start a school together, connected to the Verbrengen Cheder, a parent-led school and Arthur was my first teacher of Torah, and so there you go. And if you're in this room or Zooming, you don't know who Arthur Wasco is, just Google him. And at the moment, there actually, I would say, was sort of post Abraham Joshua Heschel, and there weren't actually a lot of Jewish social justice leaders. This was before the creation of what I call the Jewish social justice industrial complex, of which Trua is blessedly part. So I didn't have that many models, and Arthur was one who was, from the earliest days, merging his dedication to social justice with his deep understanding of Torah. I'm a failed community organizer. I realized I was too shy to go knocking doors of people who don't look like me or aren't from my background. So I thought, and then I worked at the Jewish Peace Lobby with Jerome Siegel, and we started organizing rabbis to speak out. This was 1987, the incredibly radical idea then that there should be 2 states for 2 peoples. And all of a sudden I got this idea that maybe a rabbi could be a community organizer. And I went to rabbinical school, and it's so fabulous to be sitting on this panel with Chuck Feinberg, because my first year in rabbinical school in 1992, I organized a human rights mission to Haiti at the time of the military coup, and I was dedicated to having a rabbi of every movement represented. I tried to get Orthodox, I couldn't, but we had conservative, Reform, and Reconstructionist rabbis, and that to me was like a little inkling of what could be an across-movement commitment to social justice. So I just feel very blessed that there was a movement that would admit an out lesbian in 1992, and that I was able to, follow this path, and that now there is a Jewish social justice industrial complex. I'm very pleased. And
Thank you.
Thank you. And it's an honor to be with these incredible individuals. The intersection. My story is probably very similar to many rabbis, because I think it is impossible to be a religious leader and not be moved by our texts. And we read them and we study them and we go to our seminaries. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. V'ahavta teger, love the stranger. Tzedek tzedek tirdof. I mean, we're nourished by those words. And I think all of us have that. What happens is the moment, and there's lots of moments, and I think I've had several in my life, and probably you have too. The Syrian child that washes ashore in the Mediterranean. A member of the LGBTQ community who's being attacked locally. A Muslim that's being discriminated in our state. And those words no longer just appear on the scroll, but they are engraved in your heart, and you say it's time to step up to the plate. And I think we all have that moment. We have several of those moments. But to continue the analogy of a baseball game and stepping up to the plate, you will get the brush pack pitch. You're going to get some chin music. You're going to get the high and inside pitch that tells you from either a disgruntled congregant or a wealthy donor or a board member or someone who respected you in the community, this is not your lane, get out of there. And it's scary for many rabbis. I can tell you it was scary for me. And you want to step out of the diamond. You just want to get out, go back to the bullpen. At that moment, I think all of us need someone to tell you to go back and get back in the batter's box. That's who you are. That's what you believe in. And for me, the last 40 years, I've had a partner in life that has told me every time when I got scared or I got the hate mail or I felt I've got to stay my career because where am I going to go? My wife told me, this is who you are. This is why you became a rabbi. Get back in the batter's box. And I'm very grateful to her for that.
So another question. We live in very, very heartbreaking, difficult times with untold human suffering here and abroad, in Israel, in Gaza, all over the world. It's very easy to lose hope and to lose the vision that keeps us moving forward. Where do you find hope and resilience and the faith to keep true to your values? And since many of us here, from time to time, lose hope, what would you suggest we do to find inspiration to keep going and struggling?
There have been such painful months that it has been really difficult to be optimistic. So I look to organizations like Trua, rabbis like Jill Jacobs, Amichai Laulavi, Karen Breutman, and you, Rolly. You all inspire me by the work you do. It gives me hope that the meetings that you have with Israelis and Palestinians, listening to the pain and tragedy, is the path to take. We have to hope and pray that there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. That is why I think that the more I can share your work and your stories with my family and my friends, they can in turn share these stories with others. And then, hopefully, some changes might take place.
So when I saw that question, I kind of said, I kind of am a prose kind of guy, and this really demands poetry. And so I went back to Dr. Heschel's talk that I saw when I was 15. I wasn't yet 16 yet. And I saw this passage and I felt this passage is the poetry I think the hour demands. He said, there are those who maintain that the situation is too grave for us to do much about it, that whatever we might do will be too little too late, that the most practiced thing we can do is to weep and to despair. If such a message is true, then God has spoken in vain. Such a message is 4,000 years too late. It's a good Babylonian theology. In the meantime, certain things have happened. Abraham, Moses, the prophets, the Christian gospel. History is not all darkness. It was good that Moses did not study theology under the teachers of that message. Otherwise, I would still be in Egypt building pyramids. Abraham was all alone in a world of paganism. The difficulties he faced were hardly less grave than ours. The greatest heresy is despair. Despair of men's power for goodness, men's power for love. It's not enough for us to exhort the government. What we must do is set the example. Not merely to acknowledge the Negro, he said, but to welcome him, not grudgingly, but joyously, to take delight, enabling him to enjoy what is due to him. We are all pharaohs or slaves to Pharaoh. It's sad to be a slave of Pharaoh. It's horrible to be a Pharaoh.
I gotta follow Heschel. Okay, that's not fair. I mean, following you in any case was going to be a challenge. So acres and acres and acres and acres of land have been given back to Native tribes over the last years, and now tribes are cultivating that land using the indigenous practices meant for that land, and ecosystems are starting to be revived that had been dying. Wild rice is being cultivated in places where it had been gone. Salmon are being revived in places where they were almost extinct. Okay, because we began to do the right thing, the just thing, things are coming back. We began to plant the seeds of justice, and things are starting to grow. Right, there are grassroots movements all over the place, new places where nodes of community care are being created. Right, even in the middle of these horrors and these atrocities, there are more and more people understanding now that there is no way, there is no military solution, right? We know this. There are more people who are beginning to understand this. In the Jewish community, there is even more, thriving, incredible things being created by young Jews now than have been. There's continues to be everywhere in every community all sorts of incredible things happening on the grassroots. And when we see that and we recognize that and we can cultivate that and let that flourish and grow, I think we are at this moment where the death rattle of so many systems is gruesome and horrific and causing action. I mean, the suffering and pain is real, but we are in a moment where all of these systems are potentially at this moment where more people are seeing that they are not sustainable and that they cause horrific harm. And I find hope in the recognition that wild rice is being grown because we gave land back, right? We know that when we step into justice, the right things will happen, and we can start to see the vision of that sort of wildness, that greenery coming. And so there is something on the other side of this terrifying moment if we can come together and reach for it. It just requires more visionary imagination because it's unfamiliar landscape to us. We have to let go of the systems that have been not serving us anymore. We have to be willing to go.
Amen. Amen. I'm ready. So I find hope in very weird places. So at the beginning of the Torah, everything's good, right? God makes everything. It's good, it's good, it's good. On Tuesday, it's really good. And then the beginning of chapter, and then human beings are created, and then they start doing their human being kind of stuff. And by the beginning of chapter 6, God is like, oh, me, oh my me. I have made a massive mistake. People are terrible. They're like the worst idea ever. So that was written, I don't know, 2,500 to 3,000 years ago. Then 2,000 years ago, there's this great story in the Talmud that the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai, the two sort of classic rabbinic houses, debated for a year and a half whether or not human beings should have been created. A year and a half. I think it was longer than any other debate. No one won the argument. I think it's the first time that neither house won, so they had a vote. The vote was we should not have been created. But then the teaching goes on, but since we've been created, look to your deeds. This brings me hope because we've been a really bad idea for a really, really long time. And we think right now is really bad. It's been really bad for apparently as long as there have been human beings. So I don't think we have anything to complain about. I'm serious. Like, it's not like it's so much, it was great. It wasn't great then. It was terrible. It was terrible by chapter 6 of Genesis. So, and why I love Judaism and I think I'm a rabbi is because we don't we're just obligated to do something about it. It has nothing to do with hope. It has to do with we're obligated to do something about it because apparently we're a problem and we're here and we need to try to not be a problem. So, which I think is very comforting. I'm serious. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't get better. It does not matter if it doesn't get better. We still have to do the work. And God willing, we get the land back and we plant and things are better. But even if we don't, we keep going. We don't have a choice because that's our tradition and that's what demanded of us. And the doing, it's the hope, it's the being on the ground, in Haiti or, at the Gaza border or at the border here, wherever we are, that brings hope. It's the doing. So we're a bad idea. Here we are. Let's do something about it.
I love my state of West Virginia, but it's hard not to feel a sense of hopelessness living in West Virginia. When we came to West Virginia back in the 80s, the reason we came was not just because of the Jewish community. It was the warmth, the embrace of the stranger that we saw on that Shabbat when we were walking down the boulevard. And people were coming up to us and saying, "Shalom, welcome, are you here?" And then you told them, I'm interviewing for the rabbin. "Oh, you'll love it here. There's a wonderful community." One of the warmest people you'll ever meet. Unfortunately, in the last 15, 20 years or so, they have been embraced by xenophobia that we see throughout this country, but it has an iron grip on the state of West Virginia and the people. We can discuss factors of what causes that. I mean, we're losing population in our state. We can't fill jobs, and yet the hatred for what's going on the border and the invaders, as if we're suddenly Texas and they're streaming into West Virginia. It can be very hopeless. A few months ago, I was given the honor to be with Trua and Hayas, and we went on a border trip to Juarez. And I was filled with so much hope, meeting such extraordinary people, colleagues, and energized. And then you go back to West Virginia and you hit a brick wall with our political leaders. The political ads were so over the top, the hatred of the other. So I said, what gives me hope? What gives me hope is every time I get energized by a trip, when I'm fortunate to work with AJWS or Hayas or Trua, and I come back home and I see those things, I do spend the next year or so going to communities, small communities, churches that'll speak, but mostly schools. And I'll go talk to kids, high schoolers. Sometimes I'll go to Marshall University, University of Charleston. And just like any person that thinks they're a great speaker, people are nodding off. Some people are listening politely, but there's always in the audience 1 or 2 or 3 kids that are listening intently to what I'm saying. And then they come afterwards and they say, "I want to know more about this, and this is important to me." That's a seed that's being planted in a very hopeless time. And I guess what gives me hope is I realize maybe right now I'm in the planting season of our social action. We're not going to see the plants, but somebody has to be planting those seeds. And that's what we do. And what gives me hope is being with colleagues who also are not giving up. And what gives me hope is that kid in high school that maybe 20 years from now is going to become an immigration lawyer. Or that kid might be not in West Virginia, runs for office somewhere. And immigration is an important part of his life or her life. That's what gives me hope, and that's why I won't give up.
On behalf of everyone, I want to thank our honorees for their passion, their compassion, their inspiration, and the meaningful and amazing changes that you have made to our ever-evolving Jewish community and our world. Your work has and will continue to move the needle on who we are and how we move through this broken world and these difficult times toward one of wholeness and honoring human dignity. So I invite everybody to give our honorees another huge round of applause. And I'd like to invite through us two current board co-chairs, by Bill Plevan and Sarah Litt, who was the president of BJ many years ago, to share some closing words.
Yes, I'm short. I have to bring the microphone down. Friends, it's been such a powerful evening, and I'm so honored to be part of this extraordinary community of people committed to a vision of Jewish life with human rights at its core. And it's a special honor for me to be for us to be holding this event at BJ, my spiritual home, whose rabbis Rolly Madelon and Felicia Saul have been such a powerful example of what a human rights and justice-centered version of Judaism and Jewish community can be. Before I say anything else, I want to say that we are only $5,000 away from our $400,000 goal this evening. To raise another $5,000 is really achievable. We can do it right now. In fact, we can probably raise 10 or 15 or 20 and even exceed our goal. So please, if you haven't yet, please help us reach this goal before the end of the night. We can't do this work without you, and we need every single Trua supporter to take on the critical human rights work ahead of us. If you haven't given yet, there's still time, don't worry. And for those on Zoom, the link will be pasted again in the chat. Those of us here tonight know that rabbis and cantors can be powerful human rights leaders who can bring real change to their communities and to the world. And it is your support that strengthens this movement. Again, if you haven't given yet, there's still time. And for those on the Zoom, the link will be pasted again in the chat.
I have to say, I am just so moved to see all of you here tonight with all the energy and enthusiasm. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support. Thank you for investing in a vision of a Jewish world led by rabbis and cantors devoted to human rights. And thank you so much to our incredible honorees for inspiring us and for bringing us together this evening. Before we close our program tonight, I have the honor of leading us in another thank you, to give a thank you to Rabbi Jill Jacobs for her extraordinary leadership in her tenure. In her tenure as CEO, Jill has expanded the reach of Trua's fight for human rights to corners and communities we couldn't have dreamt of over 20 years ago. Thank you, Jill, for all you do. Please give a round of applause for Rabbi Jill Jacobs. So with all of the sounds of the sounds of joy and the sounds for doing justice and the sounds of joy for giving to Trua and the sounds of applause and the sounds of praise for our honorees, we're going to end with the sound of song. We're going to welcome Molly Bagot back to the stage for one more round. Thank you very much, everyone, and good night.
Okay, what do you say? One more song? All right, this song was originally written in the 1970s by Moshe Ben Ari. who was in the band Sheva. You might know it, the familiar tune, Od Yavo. This is a resetting of that song. Translates to, peace will come upon us yet, peace upon everyone. And it's dedicated to our ongoing work for justice, that we can hold out the vision that there is something on the other side. And I invite you to sing along. Oh, Yavo, Shalom, Be'akula, Be'akula. Oh, Yavo, Shalom, Be'akula, Be'akula. Try that. Oh, Yavo, Shalom, Be'akula, Be'akula. Oh, Yavo, Shalom, Be'akula, Be'akula. Salam. Haon. Haon. Salam. Oh, Yavo, Shalom, Be'akula, Be'akula. Oh, Yavo, Shalom, Be'akula, Be'akula. Oh, Yavo, Shalom, Aleinu, Be'akula, Be'akula. Yavo, Shalom, Be'akula, Be'akula. Last time, everybody singing out. Oh, Yavo, Shalom, Be'akula, Be'akula. Oh, Yavo, Shalom, Be'akula, Be'akula. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. The desserts are being passed, but now it's just schmooze.